like to give your child the best season ever? If you've been in youth sports for many years, or maybe this is your first time, you know that youth sports is a mixed bag of challenges, of joys, of emotions, and of frustrations. I'm Janice Meredith, and I want to help you give your child the best season ever. I've been a coach's wife for 3 decades and a sports mom for 21. And in those years, I made a lot of mistakes. In fact, just ask my kids, because every time we get together and we talk about the old days and youth sports, they always bring up my mistakes. Remember when mom did this? Remember when mom said that to the ref? Of course, it's funny now, but it wasn't so funny then. It was kind of ridiculous, actually. And you know what? You're going to make a lot of mistakes too, and that's okay. But I want to share with you today the 5 biggest mistakes that I made as a sports parent, and hope that I can help you avoid some of those errors. And in the process, give your child the best season ever. Mistake number 1, I took their games too seriously, sometimes more seriously than my kids did. I didn't really need to because they were pretty competitive, but how did this show itself? Well, I think that it showed itself in a number of ways. First of all, I would get so stressed about their playing time, more than they did. Another way it showed itself is that I would often pester them with questions before or after practice, like, did the coach play you enough? Or did you get enough reps today? And they didn't want me to do that after their practices. They just wanted to come home and relax. Another way that taking it too seriously showed itself was that I would be so tense at their games. There were some games when I was so anxious that I couldn't even eat. My stomach was in knots because I was so tense. And so this is the way that I took things too seriously. Another way I think that I did it was because I would push my kids too hard to perform, to do well, and they didn't need me to do that. Now, how can you avoid making this mistake? I think there's a couple things you can do. First of all, you need to remind yourself this is youth sports. This is about the kids. This is not about you. This is not about what you want. This is about the kids, their joy, their growth, their fun. Second of all, I would just remember that you got to focus on the positive. And believe it or not, in every game, there is something to celebrate. There are little victories in every game, and you got to keep that mindset of focusing on the little victories. And lastly, I would say, choose your friends wisely. Sometimes this may mean that you have to sit apart from the negative people at a game, because that negativity is going to infect you, and it's going to affect your whole season. So you may have to distance yourself a little bit from the negativity. Mistake number 2, I wanted to interfere too much. As parents, we get frustrated when things don't go the way we think they should, so we want to fix things for our kids. We want to step in, we want to interfere. I know that I would get frustrated. I'd come home and I'd vent to my husband, and he'd say, no, Janice, we don't want to get involved. And I'd say, but yes, we need to get involved. And I usually won out. So we would send those emails and we would have those conversations with the coach. And the honest truth is, our kids never wanted it or appreciated it. So it was kind of a waste of our time, and it never really resolved the issue. How can you avoid doing this? Well, I would say you need to give yourself a hard and fast rule that at the beginning of every season, you say to yourself, we are not going to talk to the coach about playing time or position. Now, we as parents give our kids rules. We give them things that they shouldn't do and curfews and stuff. So as parents, we need to give ourselves another rule. Don't talk to the coach unless it's about something other than playing time or position. If it's about safety or morality, yes, you need to speak up, but don't talk to them about playing time or position. Mistake number 3, saying things to my kids without thinking about it. I was really good at this mistake because I would say things to my kids. One time after a game, I said to my daughter, she didn't have a very good game, and I said to her, aren't you afraid you're going to lose your starting spot? Well, that was absolutely the stupidest thing to say. She was in high school and she broke into tears. But I did it other ways too. I would rant, I would join in the rants with my kids. They would be coach bashing or teammate bashing, and I would join in those rants. Now, these kind of things are not helpful to your child. They don't resolve any issues, and they just make things worse. So how can you avoid making this mistake? Well, this is a hard thing to do, but as parents, we need to learn to think about what we say before we say it. Now, I know you can't do this in every conversation. Obviously, the whole day long, you can't be thinking about it. But when it's a touchy issue, when it's a tense issue, think about your words. Think about how your child is going to perceive them. Think about how they're going to come across and filter them a little bit. Hold back. I've gotten better about this over the years because I know what pushes my kids' buttons. And I also know that just speaking my mind isn't always going to resolve the issue. Mistake number 4, I tried to motivate my kids to work harder. Now you may say, what's wrong with motivating your kids? Well, basically, there's nothing inherently wrong with motivating your kids, but the problem is that when parents do it, it tends to cause tension in the relationship, and that kind of thing is better left for a coach or another adult or maybe a teammate. Sometimes as parents, when we try to motivate our kids, we use things that have very short-term effects. For instance, comparison or bribery or even threats. These things are very short-term solutions. They are not long-term solutions for helping your child get motivated. Mistake number 5, I sometimes worried about statistics or playing time way more than character. Now I know that may be hard to believe coming from someone who always preaches about character, but I did. I sometimes worried about it. And yes, I was one of those moms that would lay awake in bed the night before and think, is my child going to start tomorrow? Is my kid going to get enough playing time? I spent way too much time worrying. Now, how can you avoid this issue? Well, we both know that worry doesn't do anything. So when you feel yourself starting to worry, you might turn your energy towards something like asking a good question. Like, instead of worrying, think, what can my child learn from this experience? Or how can I help my child with this experience? Focus on that instead of on your worry. That's how you can avoid it. These are the top 5 mistakes I made as a sports parent, and I'm telling them to you so that you can avoid making some of the same errors. But if you do make those mistakes, give yourself some grace, because we all make mistakes, and you're gonna make mistakes, believe me. It's okay though, because remember, we always tell our kids, it's okay if you make mistakes, just get past it, move on. And as parents, we need to do the same thing. Mistakes are for learning, not repeating. And if you do that, you will be able to give your child the best season ever.